Hello, in this video you'll be creating a shaded sphere like this one you see here. You'll have to excuse the handheld quality of this video. As you can see, I already tried this with the document camera and for some reason it did not capture the video. So I'm redoing it now on my phone. Should give you pretty good quality though. First you need to read the handout, The 5 Elements of Shading, which is from this book, Lifelike Portraits from Photographs. Really great book by Lee Hammond. But I like to use just this shaded sphere exercise to introduce you to pastels. So once you've read about the 5 basic values, black, dark, medium, light, and white, and how light reflects on a three-dimensional object, you're going to practice it by creating a drawing like you see here. What you're going to need is a set of pastels from the cabinet, a pencil, a squishy eraser, which is also in the cabinet, a piece of drawing paper, and a ruler is optional. Some people really like to get these lines straight. If you really want, you can use a round object or a compass to make your circle really straight, but that's optional, like I said. So you're going to start by drawing the sphere and the value scale. You can do this one of two ways. You can draw the circle, or you can trace it from the handout, which means you would have to print out the handout. Either way, this is about 4 or 5 inches wide, just in case you're not tracing it off the handout. And these boxes are about 1 inch by 1 inch, so the whole thing is about 1 by 5 inches. All right, as you can see, it can be kind of loose. You can kind of get the idea of the shadow here. And what we're going for is these 5 values. There's actually 10 values that our eyes can see, but by having 5, it's an easy way to talk about it. You'll notice in the book that it starts with labeling black as 1. To me, that makes no sense. It seems like the higher the number, the darker the value, because you'd be adding more. So we're going to do it opposite. We're going to have 1 as white, 2 as light, 3 as medium, 4 as dark, and 5 as darkest, or we might call that black. Choose your favorite color of pastel. It really helps if it's a medium value. So this last one I did in green. I will do the opposite, and I will do it in red this time. The only colors that don't work are these light colors, the yellows, the peaches, and the really dark colors like the purple and the black. They're just too far on the end of the spectrum. It's not impossible, it's just more difficult to do it with those. So what you're going to do is actually start with the value scale up here. And if your pieces have not been broken yet, you can kind of break it 2/3 of the way. It's kind of difficult with one hand, but that actually gives you a couple different lengths to work with. And so what you have here when you're working with pastel is the long edge, the short edge, and then the point or the corner. And so that gives you different control based on what you're trying to do. We're probably mostly going to use the shorter side. And starting with the value scale, you're going to start with number 3 and give an even coat to 3, 4, and 5. And if you have any gaps, use the smaller side. And fill those in. The idea here is you just have one layer of the color, and then you're going to blend this onto your paper. And this should give you our medium tone, our half tone, which is number 3 here. That's a better camera angle. All right, and now while you have that color still on your finger, you can also do number 2, which is the light color. And that's probably how you're going to shade with the light color as well, is by putting it on your finger, because it's too difficult to do it with the pastel. Then you can do 4 and 5 by adding another layer. And what we're looking for in the value scale is distinguishable steps between each value. So we've got the white of the paper, light, medium, dark. and then the darkest. And if you choose a medium value like this red, medium values is just halfway between white and black. Blue is more on the, blue would more be on the 4 or 5 scale already, but red barely gets you past 4, and you can see that 4 and 5 look very similar. So to further darken that color in the 5, you can either take the next darkest color, which in this case could be this dark red. Those I think are a little bit close together, so I'm actually going to use the brown. If you're using one of the blues, you could use a darker blue, or you could use purple. If I could use the purple too, since purple is the darker from red. Let me do that. And just add a layer of this color, and I'm not really trying to change the color, I'm trying to make a darker shade of that color. That's pretty nice, because it's still, sorry about that, it's still red right there. Okay, so I have my white, light, medium, dark, and then my darkest with a cast shadow of purple there. Once I'm ready for the sphere, you're actually going to start with this area right here called the shadow core. And that's actually the darkest area as the sphere moves away from the light source, which is coming up here from the upper right. It's reflecting off the object, giving you the highlight. Then you've got the local color or the halftone of the object. And as it moves away from you, you've got the shadow edge, which is actually the darkest area on the object. Underneath the object here, you have light that's reflecting off of the surface that the object is sitting on. So the light is traveling past the ball, hitting the table, and reflecting back up. So that's actually going to be a little bit lighter. So on our sphere here, we're going to start by drawing really lightly that shadow edge using the longer side of the short pastel. And when you're doing this, the key is really getting it nice and round. So not making it a D, making it like a crescent moon shape, and really getting that color to come back up and around. Helps to have a little extra paper or a paper towel to wipe your finger off on. I had some purple on my finger, so I had to get that off. And then just like we did up here, we're gonna blend. Sorry about this camera. I'm drawing one-handed, which is actually kind of difficult. And because as I'm blending it, I'm getting that pastel on my finger, I can actually use it to blend into the light area. You do want to reserve a small area of highlight here. That's just the white of the paper. So maybe 2 tones on your first pass. You've got the light and the medium, but this is going to take several different layers to really get that full color. Always blend in the direction of the form. So this is round, so we're going to blend in a very round direction. And you'll notice this is what normally happens with pastel. The edges get very fuzzy. It does help if you try to stay, like I got outside of the edge here. If you just pay attention, if I wasn't looking at the camera and at the paper at the same time, if you just stay within the original line that you drew. If you do go outside, this squishy eraser, this kneadable eraser is really great. You can squish it, like I had the green on it from before. And then it really helps clean up that edge. I would like to see a neat edge on these. However, I'm less concerned that it's perfectly round. A perfect circle is one of the hardest things to draw. It's actually one of the ways that they test art school students. They make you draw things like cups and bicycles and things that have circles in them because they're really difficult to draw. I'm okay if this is a squishy ball, if this is not a perfectly round, hard object. What I'm looking for is that you have all 5 of these values and that you're following the rules of light logic here. All right, so that's doing good. I can see on the camera here, I can see at least 3 values. So I need to go for at least 4 on my sphere, and then my cast shadow underneath will be the 5th one. You can also blend some other colors in here. You'll notice that it kind of, because of the white of the paper, this color can look kind of ghosty instead of kind of robust and full. So that's where the adjacent colors of pastel really work together. You can look back at your color wheel. So the adjacent colors to red would be orange or peach or pink. Purple is adjacent, but it's also darker, so that probably wouldn't help me fill in the color. I really like peach because peach is also a color of light. The sun will often look peach in the afternoon when it's hitting an object. So if you are using a warmer color like pink or red or orange, you can use peach in these lighter areas. Again, I'm using the medium side, not the point of this one, trying to get an even layer. And then when I blend, it should stay red or reddish, and it just gives it a fuller red color to me. That's a little bit of a hard line on our highlight there, so I'm going to blend that in. And sometimes it's a bit of a back and forth. That's what I really like about pastel, is it's pretty flexible as far as blending back and forth. You can't always pull all of the pastel out. Like if I tried to erase down here, that wouldn't work. But especially when you're blending, this kneadable eraser is kind of magic, kind of amazing. All right, I do want a little bit darker red here in my shadow core. It looks pretty good on my camera, but on my paper, it just kind of looks ghosty. So I'm going to use this brown, this reddish brown, because it's very close to my color of red. It's not going to change the color too much, but it's going to deepen the color. And because there are steps in between each of these 5, the more steps you can distinguish, the more round and the more real your object is going to look. And that brown has some of the same peachy tones, orangey tones that the peach has. So it's kind of giving it a more real look there too. All right, pretty satisfied with that for the sphere. When you get that dust, just blow it off. Hopefully you don't. This is why it's good to do it in the art room and not at your apartment where you might get it on the carpet. Next, we're going to do the surface that it's sitting on. You can choose any color. I would recommend a complementary color. In this case, I'm going to use the green. I'm going to use the medium green here. Because that's really going to stand off, and then I'm going to do the background blue. So you might use 3 different colors, and especially if you have a warm color, if you use cool colors in the background, it will really make the ball pop forward, and then the background kind of sit back. So when you do the cast shadow, you're going to do the same thing, 1 light layer. This time I'm going to use the corner here of the pastel and really watch the edge, because I don't want these colors to blend together and that edge to get too messy. So I can really edge that and then fill in the rest of the shadow, going across to cross, really trying not to get more than 1 layer there. Cleaning off my fingers. And now when I rub the edge, I'm going to put my finger on top of the edge and just run right along the edge. And that way you can see how you can preserve that color. If you blend it the other way, or if you keep going back and forth, you will blend those 2 colors together and you'll lose that edge. I guess you can always erase it, but again, with pastel, the neater you can be, the more controlled you can be, the better. And it is something that is difficult, but I've done pastel with kids as young as 4, so it's totally possible. When I taught little kids, I spent a lot more time being very neat on something like this value scale, having them fill in boxes very, very neatly, using the edge, taking your time, because if you learn that, then the rest of this is really easy. You know, this is fine for a demo because I'm not trying to learn how to do edges, but if you really want to, keep it really, really nice and neat up here, and then it'll be a lot easier for you. All right, so my shadow should be 4 and 5. So this is already like a 3. I need to go 2 shades darker with the green because this is a cast shadow. This is where the light is being blocked out. And with the cast shadow, the area right underneath the object is the darkest area. And green's another color that this natural color doesn't get much darker than 4. So I'm just gonna fill it in as much as I can. The shadow can kind of be fuzzy around the edges because the light source is not right next to the object. This kind of shows that this is maybe the sun or the light coming in the window or a lamp that's farther away. All right, and then right underneath here, I need a little darker color. So I have this darker green, and this is called the touch line, where the object touches the surface. And just getting that a little bit darker. You need to use some blue. If you're really careful, you can use a tiny bit of black. It does actually go black, but the black pastel is very strong, so you want to add just a tiny amount of it to get right underneath there. That looks pretty good. I could blend more color in there, get some of that darker green out into my shadow here. Again, the more you layer the colors, the more real it's going to look. Otherwise, that white of the paper kind of shows through. Now I've got the reflected light coming up on the underside here, but I need to clean up that edge a little bit. So I'm going to use that was too dark actually. I'm going to use this lighter brown because it's a little bit lighter than my red, but not as light as the peach. And again, come and use that corner and really carefully kind of edge it in there. Take a clean finger and then again put my finger kind of on top of that edge, but then just run it right along the edge so that you can see I got half orange and half green on my finger. And that way it kind of fills in those gaps. All right, now it has a shadow, but it has no other surface here. So I do need another color. I'm gonna use the bright green, because that seems to make sense that it would be light green, casting a really dark green shadow. Again, edging it, creating a horizon line, maybe the edge of the table. And then at this point, I'm okay if some of that green gets in this light green, because this light green is really, the green that's on my finger, because this light green is really bright. So I'm okay if it kind of dulls it down a little bit. The idea for the background is just to fill it in so that your sphere can pop forward and you're getting rid of the white. Because if you have any other white, this highlight just kind of disappears. It's not the brightest thing in the picture space. Okay, that's looking pretty good. For the background, unfortunately I already used some red over here, so that's gonna get a little messed up. But just trying to think through, make a plan. I'm gonna go ahead and use this light blue. You can use any color. If I had some more time, I would clean this up so I could kind of color over it. You'll see it mix, it's okay. On yours, go ahead and clean it up. But the idea here is that you're gonna edge right along, try to get the camera right here. Use this corner and edge right along the edge of the sphere. At the studio we call this fencing, creating a little fence of color. And you can do this with paint. When you're painting, you can do this with colored pencil. It's like that old coloring book idea of outlining before you color it in. It's just a technique that keeps everything nice and clean. And then you fill it in across, nice and neat. I'll do the same over here. Sorry, I can't kind of hold the I'm using my elbow to hold the paper. Oh, technology. You have to make a way when you're a teacher, so I can get this lesson to you guys. Okay, there we go. So I have that one layer there. And same thing, I don't mind at this point if the green mixes with the background, kind of dulls down the background a little bit. If you do mind, just use a wet paper towel and wipe off your finger, and you can keep your colors really pure. Colors in nature are hardly ever pure. We strive to make pure hues so that we can mix a full range of colors, but really, we don't see colors this bright. I mean, look at this. Have you ever seen green that bright? Maybe new growth. But in nature, colors are all mixed together. All right, and here what you're trying to do is preserve this edge and get rid of any of the white of the paper. So same thing, you might have to come back on the red side and use probably a combination of, I'm gonna use the red and the peach together. If you're just using one color, if you don't feel confident in mixing colors together, or you don't wanna use red and you don't know what other color to mix, that's fine. You can totally do this with one color. Again, the art major in me comes out and I start just automatically using my advanced color theory, and like you guys saw when I did the Kandinsky watercolor, I just can't help it, I'm sorry. It's super fun, and you kind of get to see some of a higher level of this than kids would get to see. There we go. That looks pretty good. The edges could be a little bit cleaner, but I've completed the objectives here. I have a sphere that looks round. I have at least 5 values, so I have my highlight, my light, my middle tone, my shadow edge, and my reflected light. In my cast shadow, I have a really dark area for my touch line, and I filled in the background so that the ball really looks round and jumps forward. So I hope you enjoy this, and I will see you next class. Oh, make sure that when you're done with this, you put it in a plastic sheet protector, because pastel will always be messy. If you need to cut your paper down, that's fine. You just want to be able to see your main drawing. So have fun.